Welcome to Wisdom of the Bible channel. Joseph was one of Jacob's 12 sons, known for his great dreams, but also for facing many trials. His tale in Egypt began in a dramatic moment when his brothers, fueled by jealousy and resentment, sold him as a slave to a group of Ishmaelite traders. At only 17, he carried plenty of hope for the future, yet this betrayal tore him away from his family's care and from the promises God had declared. Suddenly, he stood in a foreign land, far from home and loved ones. When Joseph arrived in Egypt, he was bought by Potiphar, a top official of Pharaoh and chief of the royal guard. Although he had been made a slave, the Bible tells us that the Lord remained with him, and this caused Joseph to succeed in everything he did. His honesty and managerial talents soon impressed Potiphar, who entrusted him with the oversight of his entire household and all that belonged to him. Joseph gained high regard, and his new role opened doors to Egypt's upper circles. Yet, his life there was not free of trouble. Potiphar's wife, drawn to his youth and vigor, attempted to seduce him, but Joseph stood firm in his devotion to God and upheld his moral principles. Infuriated by his rejection, she wrongly accused him of assault, and Joseph was sent to prison. Even behind bars, he held on to his faith in the Lord. During his confinement, he kept demonstrating his remarkable ability to interpret dreams. These dreams earned him the prison warden's trust, and he was placed over the other inmates. His gift became well known within the prison walls, giving him a measure of favor in that dark place. During this period, Joseph interpreted the dreams of two officials of Pharaoh, the cupbearer and the baker, and events unfolded exactly as he predicted. Years later, Pharaoh began having disturbing dreams that none of his sages or magicians could decipher. At that moment, the cupbearer, now released, recalled Joseph and informed Pharaoh about the prisoner who could interpret dreams. Summoned to the royal court, Joseph explained Pharaoh's dreams with precision. He foretold 7 years of plentiful harvests, then 7 years of severe scarcity. Joseph recommended storing provisions in the fruitful years to withstand the looming drought. Struck by Joseph's insight and organizational skill, Pharaoh not only released him from prison, but made him governor of all Egypt, overseeing food collection and distribution. In this role, Joseph arranged the gathering and safekeeping of grain during the prosperous seasons, guaranteeing the nation would be ready for the severe famine to come. His rapid elevation was a clear sign of divine guidance. His loyalty and insight lifted him from servitude to the second rank in Egypt, just after Pharaoh himself. His influence was recognized throughout the royal court. During this time, Pharaoh, even more amazed by Joseph's leadership and influence, orchestrated a strategic marriage for him. Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, a priest from Heliopolis, was given to Joseph as his wife. This union did not spring from romance or a long courtship, but fulfilled a strategic goal. By selecting Asenath, Pharaoh intended to reinforce Joseph's rising authority by linking it to Egypt's influential priesthood. As the daughter of a priest of Ra, Egypt's sun god, Asenath was immersed in the nation's polytheistic customs. Her marriage to Joseph signified a strategy to unite Egypt's different power groups under his guidance. Joseph's saga in Egypt, defined by intense struggles and ultimate triumph, remains one of the Bible's most striking narratives. He not only saved Egypt from a dire famine, but also confirmed his standing in the court through his wisdom and integrity. Along the way, he married Asenath, a union that would matter greatly for his own life and his family's future. Asenath was the daughter of Potiphar, an Egyptian priest from Heliopolis, a major religious center in ancient times. Heliopolis, known in Greek as the City of the Sun, was a vital center for worshiping Ra, the sun god. As a priest of Ra, Potiphar was deeply immersed in rites and devotions honoring this deity, viewed as one of the strongest and most revered gods in Egypt. Situated close to modern-day Cairo, Heliopolis was a leading hub of knowledge and faith, where priests like Potiphar guided temple services, taught the people, and safeguarded sacred traditions. Growing up as Potiphar's daughter, Asenath was nurtured in a polytheistic setting focused on honoring the sun. Egypt then was dominated by many gods, revered through diverse rites and elaborate temple ceremonies. The faith held that Ra, symbolized by the sun, governed all creation and preserved the balance of the cosmos. Such devotion touched every part of daily life. Asenath grew up worshipping Ra and other gods like Isis, Osiris, and Horus, all tied to nature, fertility, and life cycles. Her upbringing and identity were rooted in these religious practices, typical among priestly families who wielded both spiritual and political power. In fact, her name suggests a close link to Egypt's faith traditions. Some researchers believe that Asenath's name may come from an ancient Egyptian term meaning belonging to Nith, or dedicated to Nith. Nith was a goddess linked to hunting, war, and protection, usually shown as a woman bearing a bow and arrows. Highly revered in Egypt, her association with warfare and hunting signified power, defense, and martial prowess, traits greatly valued for a priestly family's daughter. Asenath's link to Nith may imply she held a notable religious role, perhaps set to serve or personify the goddess in sacred rituals. She grew up in a deeply spiritual setting, where the Egyptian gods touched every facet of daily life. Her name embodied her commitment and bond to one of Egypt's warrior deities. For her, faith in these gods was a central part of her upbringing. Yet her path changed dramatically when she married Joseph, an Israelite whose unwavering monotheism and strong moral character would shape not only his destiny, but also affect Asenath's life. Following his extraordinary climb to influence, Joseph was named governor of Egypt by Pharaoh, recognizing his gift for dream interpretation and his foresight concerning 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. At the peak of his authority, Joseph took a key role in preserving Egypt's security through that catastrophic period. With this new position came a different political reality, demanding alliances that would safeguard his place in Egypt's court and bolster his standing. Understanding the importance of uniting various power groups, Pharaoh arranged for Joseph to wed Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of Ra. This marriage was, in essence, a move to solidify Joseph's influence. By marrying Asenath, Joseph not only enhanced his stature in Pharaoh's realm, but also forged a link with the Egyptian priesthood, a class wielding immense religious and cultural sway. Potiphar, as a priest of Ra, was part of a distinguished family in Egypt's religious sphere, and through this union, Joseph aligned himself with that influential group overseeing much of the kingdom's spiritual practices. Pharaoh likely viewed this step as a way to root Joseph's growing power in a firm religious framework, granting him broader social acceptance. Joseph and Asenath's marriage greatly impacted Egypt's social and political landscape. For Joseph, the union marked his acceptance into the elite and further cemented his role in the government. As Joseph's wife, Asenath emerged as a figure of note, linking her family's status with his expanding authority. Her presence also symbolized a bridge between the people of Israel and Egypt's ruling class. In a land where political legitimacy was closely intertwined with religious standing, Asenath implicitly helped affirm Joseph's leadership. Though scripture says little about her direct influence, her position as the governor's wife suggests a degree of unspoken power. Their marriage connected two different cultures. Living with Joseph, who was faithful to the God of Israel, would have influenced Asenath's own religious outlook. This union likely signified not just a strategic arrangement, but a personal and spiritual shift, ushering Asenath into Israel's unfolding narrative. She was more than a political partner. She stood at the heart of Joseph's story and of Israel's future. Thus, Joseph and Asenath's relationship represented key alliances that safeguarded Joseph's role in Egypt and ensured his family's well-being. He remained not only Egypt's chief overseer of resources, but also held a prized position in the royal court, supported by Pharaoh and the priestly orders. Although scripture does not dwell on Asenath's later life, it is clear that she played a vital part in stabilizing Joseph's place and bridging Israel and Egypt. During the prosperous years before the great famine Joseph had foretold, he and Asenath had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Their births brought deep meaning to Joseph's journey, as each name reflected the struggles and solace he experienced. Manasseh, the firstborn, was named to honor the way God helped Joseph forget the pain of his past hardships. Joseph said Manasseh meant "he who makes forget," expressing how he moved beyond the memories of betrayal and loss. His life had been a series of rises and falls, from his brother's treachery to his unjust imprisonment, and this new child symbolized relief from that burden. His second son, Ephraim, received a name meaning fruitful or prosperous, reflecting the abundance and blessing God had granted Joseph, despite the afflictions he suffered. Ephraim stood for more than material wealth. He pointed to divine grace that blossoms in adversity. Together, Manasseh and Ephraim told a story of sorrow and renewal in Joseph's life. Years later, when Jacob was finally reunited with Joseph, he blessed his grandsons, Manasseh and Ephraim. This took place near the end of Jacob's life, when he gathered his sons for final words and blessings. As Jacob reached out to bless the boys, he crossed his hands, placing his right hand on the younger Ephraim and his left on the older Manasseh. Joseph, thinking it a mistake, tried to correct him, but Jacob refused, insisting that Ephraim was chosen by God to become greater. Manasseh would also become a great people, but Ephraim held a special place in God's plan. Jacob's choice challenged human expectations and showed that God's ways often differ from typical customs. This gesture ensured that Ephraim's descendants would be powerful, ultimately leading the northern tribes of Israel. Despite their mother's Egyptian heritage, Manasseh and Ephraim both became integral to Israel's history. Though they were born of an Egyptian mother, their roles as the heads of tribes in Israel underscored how God's covenant could extend beyond cultural boundaries. By blessing Ephraim above Manasseh, Jacob affirmed God's ongoing plan in Joseph's life and showed that these two sons served as a link between Egypt and Israel, uniting separate nations and traditions. The tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim carried on Joseph and Asenath's legacy, growing into key parts of Israel's story. Their unique origins set them apart, and over time, their paths diverged in prominence. Though Manasseh held a vital place, particularly with part of its tribe settling east of the Jordan and often bearing the responsibility of safeguarding Israel's borders, Ephraim eventually stood out more. After the Israelites settled in Canaan and the united monarchy later split, Ephraim rose as the central tribe of the northern kingdom, becoming its leading force in politics and defense. Meanwhile, Manasseh still contributed important leaders and fighters, such as those involved during the era of the Judges. Yet Ephraim became a focal point in the north, capitalizing on its central location in Canaan. For a large part of Israel's divided history, Ephraim took the reins, shaping events and influencing the nation's course. Despite her major role in Joseph's life, Asenath remains a shadowy figure in the biblical text. Beyond naming her as Joseph's wife and the mother of Manasseh and Ephraim, Genesis offers little about her later years. There is no account of her interactions with Jacob or Joseph's brothers after they all settled in Egypt. Her fate and experiences remain unrecorded. This omission is not unusual in the Old Testament, where many women, though essential to the narrative, receive minimal attention. While the scripture highlights the stories of certain prominent women, many others, like Asenath, appear briefly, their personal perspectives left unrevealed. This can reflect the societal framework of the time, where events often focused on male figures, and women's roles were less documented. As an Egyptian, Asenath may have been doubly overlooked, primarily portrayed as part of a political or religious alliance. The text mentions her mostly to show how Joseph entered Egypt's priestly and royal circles. Though her name and background imply significance, the Bible remains silent about her later journey. This pattern appears in many other stories of the Old Testament, where vital contributions of women are noted but not deeply explored. Even so, Asenath's presence confirms that women shaped biblical history, whether or not their detailed accounts survived. She was crucial in God's plan, even as the record of her life remains sparse. Given the Bible's silence, Jewish tradition and Midrash have tried to fill in the gaps surrounding Asenath. Since scripture reveals little about her, various legends and explanations arose to identify her more closely with Israel. One tradition proposes she was actually Dinah's daughter, born after Dinah's ordeal in Shechem, then sent to Egypt and adopted by Potiphar. This view places Asenath firmly within Jacob's bloodline despite her Egyptian upbringing, suggesting she eventually recognized her Hebrew heritage and embraced Joseph's faith. Another long-standing idea is that Asenath converted to worship the one true God, influenced by Joseph's devotion. Joseph's steadfast piety and commitment to God are believed to have inspired her to abandon Egyptian gods and follow the Lord of Israel. In this view, Asenath's transformation exemplifies how faith can transcend cultural and religious barriers. These interpretations, though outside canonical scripture, aim to show Asenath as more than a political figure. They see her as part of a greater, redemptive narrative where different nations and beliefs meet under God's watchful plan. An apocryphal text called Joseph and Asenath also expands on their story, though it is not part of the Bible. Likely written between the 2nd century BC and 1st century AD, it sets out a more dramatic account of their romance and marriage. In this version, Asenath is initially devoted to the Egyptian gods, while Joseph refuses to marry someone who worships idols. Moved by her remorse and wish to change, he eventually accepts her, and she fully converts to his faith. The tale even includes a subplot with Pharaoh's son pursuing Asenath and scheming against Joseph. This rivalry leads to conflict, betrayal, and ultimately Joseph rising even higher. Though it differs from the biblical account, it reflects a Hellenistic style that blends romance with political intrigue, showing how later writers